All right, so today we're gonna take a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, I think, and that is the Y chromosome.
Oh, yeah. It's a good one.
You think about it, and I know that our listeners are really interested in genetics, so this should be right up their alley. But this chromosome has been in the news quite a bit
It
lately
has. It
because
has.
it's shrinking,
Right.
and so we've got some research here that we're gonna kind of dive into and try to suss out what's going on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
What does it mean that the Y chromosome is shrinking? Is it really going to disappear? What genes has it lost? And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all the big questions, right?
Yeah, all the big questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a really cool example of, the power of evolution and how things change over time.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really remarkable how much this one little chromosome has changed.
So it wasn't always so tiny.
No, not at all.
Yeah, what happened there?
So hundreds of millions of years ago, the Y chromosome was actually very similar in size and gene content to the X chromosome.
Oh, wow.
But then a pivotal event occurred where a gene called SRY developed on the Y chromosome.
Okay, yeah. SRY, that's the one that basically determines maleness, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
Like a genetic switch.
Yeah, exactly. It's the master switch for male development.
Yeah.
So it triggers the development of testes, and then that sets off a cascade of hormonal changes and leads to, all the male characteristics. But this specialization came at a cost.
Oh, how so?
Well, unlike the X chromosome, which has a partner to pair with in females, the Y chromosome was kind of left on its own.
Oh.
And this meant it couldn't benefit from recombination.
So recombination, that's basically like chromosomes swapping bits of DNA to kind of stay healthy, right?
Exactly. It's like a way for them to repair and maintain their integrity,
Mm-hmm.
but the Y chromosome is missing out on that.
Oh, so it's like, if you have two copies of a file and one gets corrupted, you've got a backup.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
But the Y chromosome is kind of flying solo.
Yeah. And over time, that meant it started to accumulate mutations and lose genes it no longer needed.
And that's what they call Muller's ratchet, right?
Exactly. Muller's ratchet. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, imagine a book being constantly copied, but with errors creeping in each time.
Right.
And there's no way to correct those errors. So eventually the text just becomes garbled and loses its meaning.
Wow. So what sorts of genes did the Y chromosome actually lose? I mean, what's gone missing?
Well, it lost a variety of genes. Some of them were what we call housekeeping genes. These are genes involved in basic cellular functions that both sexes need.
Okay.
But the X chromosome already carried copies of these genes, so losing them from the Y wasn't a huge problem.
Gotcha. So it's like it had some redundancy built in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the Y chromosome also shed some genes related to immune and stress responses.
Hmm. And is that maybe one reason why some research suggests that men might be more susceptible to certain illnesses?
That's one possible explanation, although it's a complex issue with many factors involved.
Right, of course.
But losing those immune-related genes could mean that men are more reliant on their single X chromosome for those functions.
Interesting. And it wasn't just single genes, right? Like a whole chunks of the Y chromosome went missing too.
Yeah, it lost many genes that were originally shared with the X chromosome,
Wow.
which means that for those specific genes, men only have one copy, making them more vulnerable to certain genetic disorders.
Right. Like if that one copy gets messed up, there's no backup.
Exactly. There's no backup. And, there was a study published in Nature just last year
Oh, wow.
that found that men with a deletion in a specific region of the Y chromosome
Okay.
had a significantly higher risk of developing certain types of cancer.
Oh, wow. That's pretty scary.
It is. It really highlights the connection between the Y chromosome structure and its impact on health.
I see. So this gene loss wasn't like a one-time event, right?
Mm.
It happened gradually over millions of years.
You're right. It was a gradual process.
Mm.
But research suggests there was a period of accelerated gene loss early in the Y chromosome's evolution, perhaps around the time it acquired that SRY gene.
Oh, so it's like it went on a decluttering spree.
Yeah, exactly. Got rid of anything that wasn't absolutely essential for its new role in sex determination.
Fascinating. So after all that downsizing, what's actually left on the Y chromosome, what makes it so important even in its slimmed down form?
Well, despite all the losses, it's clung fiercely to the genes that are crucial for its main mission,
Yeah.
making males male.
Right.
And it's become incredibly efficient at doing so.
Yeah.
So I've got the SRY gene, of course, the one that kicks off male development.
Yeah.
But there are other important genes too, like the DAZ genes.
DAZ genes, what are those all about?
They're vital for sperm production.
Ah, so without DAZ genes, no passing on the Y chromosome.
Exactly. Fertility would be a major issue. And then there's these things called pseudoautosomal regions, or PIs for short.
PR pseudoautosomal regions. That sounds a little complicated.
They're actually pretty simple. They're small sections where the Y chromosome can still swap a bit of genetic material with the X chromosome.
Oh, so like little bridges, keeping some communication open between the two.
That's a great way to put it. And then you've got other genes that are unique to the Y chromosome, that seem to be involved in testosterone production and other male-specific traits, although we're still figuring out exactly what some of them do.
So even though it's shrunk, it's still got a lot going on. But what about this idea that the Y chromosome might completely vanish? Is that a real possibility, or is that just like sensational science fiction?
It's a question that has sparked a lot of debate in the scientific community. There's evidence on both sides.
What are the arguments for and against it disappearing?
Well, on the one hand, some species have already lost their Y chromosomes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the spiny rat. It's evolved a totally different way of determining sex. The SRY gene, that crucial male-determining gene we talked about, actually jumped ship to a different chromosome.
Wow, so evolution found a workaround.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. It shows that losing the Y chromosome doesn't necessarily mean the end of males. But then you look at studies of human and chimpanzee Y chromosomes, and they seem to have stabilized. The genes that are left are what we call highly conserved, which means they've remained pretty much unchanged for a long time.
So they've gotten rid of the fluff and are holding on tight to what's important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was this study back in 2014 that looked at the Y chromosomes of humans and rhesus monkeys.
Okay.
Their lineages diverged about 25 billion years ago, and they found that only one gene had been lost in that entire time.
Wow.
It's a pretty strong argument for stability.
So you're thinking they're probably here to stay.
It's certainly possible. The stability suggests they've reached a sort of functional minimum, a core set of genes that are essential for their survival.
Okay, so let's just play devil's advocate for a minute and say that the human Y chromosome does eventually disappear. What would happen?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be the end of men as we know them, but it would definitely raise some interesting questions. As we've seen with the spiny rat, evolution could find a way around it. Maybe those essential Y chromosome genes would relocate to another chromosome, or a completely new sex-determining mechanism could evolve.
Like environmental sex determination, where things like temperature influence whether an embryo becomes male or female. I know some reptiles do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Although it's probably less likely for humans with our complex biology.
Right.
But then again, evolution is full of surprises. And let's not forget about human ingenuity. With all the advancements in genetic technology, we might be able to address those challenges.
That's true. We're already seeing some pretty amazing things with gene editing and reproductive technologies.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily a doomsday scenario, more like a fascinating evolutionary puzzle that we're still piecing together.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a puzzle that has some real-world implications, right? Like for men's health.
Absolutely. The fact that the Y chromosome has shrunk so much, it means that men may be more susceptible to certain health issues. Well, for one thing, the loss of genes involved in sperm production is linked to male infertility, which is a growing concern.
Oh, I see.
And as we mentioned before, men might be more vulnerable to some genetic disorders and certain types of cancer because they only have one copy of many genes on the X chromosome.
Right, because there's no backup copy on the Y.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So understanding the Y chromosome isn't just about scientific curiosity. It's about gaining insights that could lead to better health outcomes for men.
Yeah, that makes sense. So studying the Y chromosome could help us develop new therapies and interventions for all sorts of health challenges.
Exactly.
That's the hope.
It's really kind of wild to think about, how much impact this one tiny chromosome has had on, well, everything, from health to evolution.
Yeah, it really is. And it shows you just how interconnected biology really is. Even the smallest things can have huge effects.
I think it's also pretty incredible how resilient the Y chromosome is. I mean, despite losing so many genes, and changing so much, it's still hanging in there doing its job. Oh, yeah, absolutely. The Y chromosome is a survivor. It's been through a lot over millions of years, facing all kinds of challenges. But it's found ways to adapt and keep going. It really shows you the power of natural selection to shape life, even at the most fundamental level.
It makes you wonder, if this adaptability of the Y chromosome says something about life in general, like maybe it tells us something about the potential for all life to adapt and overcome obstacles.
That's a really interesting question. And I think it does give us some reason to be optimistic. If this tiny chromosome can change so much and still thrive, it suggests that life as a whole has a remarkable capacity for resilience and finding new ways to exist.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive. We've gone from the Y chromosome's ancient origins all the way to its potential future. So as we wrap things up, is there anything else you think is important for our listeners to take away from all this?
I think the main takeaway is that the Y chromosome may be small, but it's definitely not insignificant. It's a vital part of human biology. And its journey through evolution gives us a fascinating glimpse into the forces that have shaped us as a species. And, its story isn't over yet. Future research is bound to reveal even more surprising insights.
It's amazing to think we're still learning so much about something as fundamental as the Y chromosome.
It just goes to show that science is a process of constant discovery. There are always more questions to ask, more mysteries to solve.
Uh-huh.
And the Y chromosome, with its unique history and all its implications for human health and evolution, it's going to keep scientists and the public fascinated for a long time to come, I think.
Well said. Well, I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about, and I'm sure it will spark some interesting conversations for our listeners too.
I hope so.
Mm.
Maybe you'll even inspire some future scientists to take on the challenge of figuring out all the secrets this remarkable little chromosome still holds.
That would be awesome. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the fascinating world of the Y chromosome. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a captivating topic.